Speaking of the Raiders, reports came out today that Derek Carr has officially been released by the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep.
Reports came out last week that he met with the New Orleans Saints. They had a good meeting, and a trade deal was being worked out between the Raiders and the Saints for his services. Obviously, Derek Carr has the no trade clause, so he has all the power in the situation, and he let it be known that he is not going to accept the trade to the New Orleans Saints. Thus, the Raiders were forced to release him today. So, with all that being said, where do you think Derek Carr plays next year?
Well, they were forced to release him because if they didn't release him today, they would be on the hook for $40 million guaranteed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I think it's going to be an NFC South team. Now, whether or not it's the Saints or it's the Buccaneers, that's open to interpretation. Whether or not he goes to the Jets, if the New York Jets lose out on the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, I think that's going to be the backup plan. But honestly, I think it's going to be somehow the Saints. Like I think that might be the case. I think so. I think it might just be coming down to, he didn't really want to give the Raiders a solid. It's like, yeah, you can trade me here and you get draft assets. Like, no, you're gonna release me. I'm gonna potentially sign wherever I want. And not only that, Jay, like, because they released him today, they don't even get like a comp pick for this dude. So like the Raiders completely bungled this whole situation with how the contract was worked out. Like 3 days after the Super Bowl, you have to find a trade candidate or you're going to be on the hook for $40 million guaranteed. So it was a squeeze play. It was inevitable that they were going to cut this man. So like, if you're a team, why would you trade assets when you could potentially get this dude for pennies on the dollar and you keep your draft picks there? Because the Raiders were a lose-lose. And now he went Bafangul to him, and they're not even going to get a comp pick for this guy. So I think it's going to be definitely an NFC South team. I think the Saints are ahead in the doghouse.
Yeah, Saints are a good spot for him. They've got a good core of offensive weapons: Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave. They've got a good defense. And the only thing I have a concern with is their head coach. I don't believe Dennis Allen is anything special. So, that's a good spot. But when you said NFC South, he would work really well with who? He would work really well with Frank Reich. I feel like with Frank Reich and Frank Reich is putting together a powerhouse staff in Carolina. This is one of the underrated storylines of the week so far because the Super Bowl is going on. But, he just hired on, what was his name? Jim Caldwell. He basically got him out as an offensive assistant. He hired a great offensive mind, great defensive coordinator. So, I think Carolina is doing something special. I think they're obviously a couple of years away from competing, but I'll tell you what, if I'm Derek Carr and I want to resurrect my career, I go to Frank Reich. Like, listen, man, like, hey, man, I know we might not be great this year, but if you can, provide me with a 2 or 3 year guarantee, I'll give you everything I have. And I promise you, by the end of that 3 year stretch, I think Derek Carr would be a great quarterback and that Panthers team will be awesome as well. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, obviously not, but, it's a great spot for him.
Right. I feel like, Dave Tepper might have just accepted reality that they're going to have to get young and they're going to have to find their franchise quarterback because they've been burned so much with the Sam Darnold experience and Baker Mayfield. And, who knows if maybe Matt Corral might have been the guy if he didn't get hurt in training camp. They burned draft capital to get Will Grier and that didn't work out. I just don't know if they're going to try to hitch their caboose to like another veteran quarterback. And I'm not saying he is the same as those two bozos. I think he's light years ahead of where those, Mayfield and Darnold are. But I feel like they're going to try to find their guy in the draft. Now that's not beyond the realm of they have the honest discussion with Derek and say, listen, we're taking a quarterback in the draft. We will sign you for like the veteran minimum type of deal on like a prove it deal. You'll be the guy for this season. This guy will sit behind you and learn the whole process of what being a quarterback in the NFL is. And the following season, we'll see where we're at type of deal. I don't think that's the bridge too far.
Well, this was quite the fall from grace, wasn't it? Like, wasn't Derek Carr the hometown hero basically for the Raiders?
He was an MVP candidate in the mid 2000s, so he broke his leg. Oh my God.
People loved him before the season started. People were talking about the Raiders being a Super Bowl contender and like You just saw it. You just saw he just didn't have it. Like there's something about him where he kind of freaks out and just throws the ball into bad situations. Like that's the best way I can paint Derek Carr in a nutshell. Is he has all potential in the world. He had all the weapons in the world. He had a great offensive mind, in my opinion. Josh McDaniels this year, and he just for some reason never got the system, and he just freaked out way too much. And it's funny what the preseason narrative was around the Raiders and Derek Carr, and now where we are now, him getting released a year into his new contract. It's
Mhm.
quite the shift in what happened, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Life comes at you
absolutely.
fast in the NFL.
It does, and who knows? Maybe Mark Davis might have been squeezed a little bit for cash. Who
Uh,
knows? Maybe,
yeah. Yikes. Yeah.
but that's the
Um,
Derek Carr sweepstakes. Who would have thought you would have had Derek Carr and the word sweepstakes just mashed together?
I know, right? I know. Yeah, but I mean, I think you make a good point. It's probably going to end up being the Saints for all intents and purposes. And it probably, if the Jets are an outside contender, if obviously, Aaron Rodgers doesn't land with the Jets, then they got to figure out what they're going to do next year in quarterback. They can't go into the draft because they don't have 2 or 3 years to develop another guy on that roster.
Mhm.
You can't go with Zach Wilson. So Derek Carr could be a backup for the Jets.
And it's another thing too, like reading the landscape. If you're Derek Carr and you want to make it to the playoffs again,
Mhm.
is the route going to be easier in the NFC or the AFC? I
Yeah,
would
you're
probably
right.
look for an NFC
NFC.
team.
Yeah. So you know
Who
how much I
knows?
hate.
Maybe he goes to Washington
Uh-huh.
because they're going to be out on Wentz. Like that was the report that came out. Hell, I think that came out Super Bowl Sunday in the morning. That it looks like they're going to find a way. They're going to part ways with Carson Wentz after they completely obliterated their cap this season, trading for him and assets.
Yeah.
Taylor Heineke. I love Heineke, but he's not the guy. Howell showed promise, but again, it was one game at the end of the year. Do you is it beyond the realm that Derek Carr and Sam Howell compete? And if Derek Carr wins it out, like okay, you have Derek Carr and possibly Eric
Yeah.
Bieniemy, who's been linked heavily to that job as an offensive coordinator, and I think Greg Roman was interviewing either today or tomorrow for that job. I think it's going to tell where Washington's going to go. If they hire Greg Roman, I think they're going to try to look at the athleticism of Sam Howell. If they go the other route, maybe they look at Derek Carr possibly coming in on the cheap. Who knows? The NFC East, in my opinion, is not the NFC beast as some people like to claim it is. But that's just my two
So
cents.
let's get a little nuts, okay? Let's
Okay.
say Bill Belichick decides he's not sold on Mac Jones, okay, and he
Mm-hmm.
wants a veteran quarterback in camp to push Mac Jones. I think if I'm Derek Carr, I listen to Bill Belichick and see if I can go over there and try to resurrect my career. They got Bill O'Brien now, who obviously is a great offensive mind. They've got decent enough weapons on that roster. Like I know everybody likes to shun the Patriots' weapons, and I get it; they're not elite. But Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Ramondre Stevenson. There's a good nucleus of weapons there. And I truly believe that Bill Belichick is not sold on Mac Jones. He said it so many times that he's not going to go ahead and name him the starter over the whole year. So, do you see a scenario where Derek Carr could end up in New England and potentially push Mac Jones?
Yeah, that or he could just push the ball down the field as the starter on opening day. I don't think
Mhm.
that's beyond the realm of possibility either. You get a bit on the cheap. You're playing under the guise of the wizened, guy on the mountaintop and Bill Belichick. Like, no, I don't think that's beyond. That's a bridge too far to cross. I could definitely, but if he's going to like an AFC team that is not
Mhm.
the New York Jets, I could see the New England Patriots being a potential landing spot. And I mean, I'm here for like the let's get nuts scenarios all the time,
Yeah.
anyways. Can you imagine the narrative of Mac Jones lost out to Derek Carr?
Well, in my mind, Mac Jones at his best is Derek Carr.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just negate all that development and spending 2 3 years on trying to develop him to become Derek Carr and just go and get Derek Carr? I mean, does that make too much sense?
No, and plus, like you don't have to go. You don't have to deal with like the mental trauma per se that Mac Jones had of working with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia and Bill Belichick calling offensive plays. Like you have a guy that literally has no attachments to that coaching staff last
Mhm.
year, and you can just
Yeah.
drop him in there with Bill O'Brien and. I mean, let's be honest. Like Derek Carr, yeah, he can push the ball down the field, but it's not like he's not the check down Charlie guy either. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
can check it down all day if you want him to.
Mm-hmm.